Welcome to the Show Announcers Academy. This webinar series is in partnership with Agricultural Shows Australia. It's all about helping the next generation of agricultural show commentators prepare to pick up a microphone, and is supported by funding from the Australian Government Department of Agriculture, Water and the Environment as part of its Landcare Smart Farms Capacity Building Program, because they appreciate the critical role agricultural shows play in connecting farmers and consumers, city and country Australians, and bringing communities together. Today, my guest is Lyndsey Douglas, who is a familiar face on the rural show circuit. Hey, Lyndsey, how are you going?
Well, thanks, Jen. Thanks so much for doing this with us today.
It's my pleasure. So firstly, obviously today is all about that integral part of the show announcing. You've been doing it for quite some time now. Tell us about your experience.
I did a very long unpaid cadetship. I did about 10 years working with a couple of shows that were just near and dear to me, the Condobolin Show and Camden Show, and kind of just learning the ropes and figuring it out. I was really lucky at Camden Show to work with Rory Nash and Michelle Nash, who are very well known and charismatic ring announcers, and they just let me do little bits here and there and guided me. And then I got to work with Tim Drevman at Camden Show when he succeeded them. And it was really at that point where I realised the value of being mentored by someone who was very capable in the show announcing space. And subsequently over the years, I think there's so few show ring announcers out there that my name's kind of escaped. And now I travel as far as Esperance in Western Australia, Melbourne. I do Emerald Show. I do a ton of shows in New South Wales and a bunch of the Royals as well. So it's actually turned into a little bit of a side career. And last year I was booked to do about 90 days worth of show announcing. So it's something I love. And it's just, sometimes you just kind of pinch yourself thinking, I can't believe I get to travel Australia and do this for fun and for work.
So this is all about encouraging more people to pick up a microphone. Who are some of the people you've met that I guess you do so many shows and people out there might think, oh, I couldn't do that, but yet so many people involved in shows could pick up a microphone?
Absolutely. Well, Jen, like you, because you and I went to university together, anyone that's studying media or communications is a really obvious fit. If they know a little bit about their community or they're involved in some sort of agriculture, and I grew up on a farm and you live on a farm, so it's easier for us to make that segue. But I think stock and station agents, young stock and station agents are ideal candidates. Anyone who's been a rural ambassador or a showgirl, and showgirl has since been renamed in recent weeks to young woman. So anyone who's a future young woman, I think they're the ideal personality, but that's not to be ageist either. I don't think you need to be 21 to pick up a microphone for the first time. If you're a school teacher or a school principal and you're used to speaking at assemblies and educating people, and you want to do it as a retirement activity, you're also an ideal person to become a show ring announcer.
And what would your best advice be to people who want to pick up the microphone and get involved?
I sat down the other day and actually wrote out 10 tips that I would suggest to someone doing it for the first time. A lot of the announcers I work with have a really natural agricultural knowledge and acumen, and they don't need to do a lot of preparation, and I'm enormously envious of them. That is not how I operate, though. I have a simple, because I do so many shows now, I have a simple 10-question form that I send to every show, and it's things like, what's your anniversary this year? Are you celebrating your 200th show or your 175th or your 25th show? Who's your president? What's their story? Who's your secretary? Who are your life members and their mobile numbers so I can interview them on the grounds? Because there are often people older in their years that have a wonderful yarn, and I'm going to have to fill a lot of hours at their show. I'll ask them who their showgirl or young woman is, depending on whether you're in Queensland or New South Wales, their rural ambassador, where they'd like me to focus my attention. Would you like me to stick with the show jumping? Would you like me to move to cattle for a big trophy presentation? Would you like me to head over to sheep? What do I need to know for your official opening? Do you have dignitaries coming? Just basic things that you end up scrambling on the day to acquire anyway. I'd rather have it before I turn up. I have this ludicrous irrational fear, Jen, that my brain won't function on show day. So I try and just make sure that all I've got to do is speak. And of course, that's not what ends up happening. You end up having a ball, chatting, and it's all very fluid and live. But I do like to go in with a bit of preparation. My second tip would be say yes, even if it terrifies you. About 5 years ago, the Sydney Royalists show, the RAS, came to me and invited me into their broadcast box, and I was petrified, but I said yes, and I've never looked back. Grand National, which is the preeminent hack show in Australia. They fly in British judges. It's all the best show ring horses. They said to me, could you do our live stream, which is like 15 hours a day of talking about horses on a live stream to a very knowledgeable audience. Again, my heart said, don't do it, don't do it. You don't know, don't do it. And you just say yes and you figure it out. And I had a great time. Same thing with the Queensland Royal. I'm not a Queenslander. I feel like a bit of a fraud. I was the first woman they'd appointed to that role in 142 years since inception. Again, I was, all the anxiety says, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. You shouldn't be doing that. And you jump in and do it. And I just loved every minute of it, and getting to work with a very famous person called Farmer Dave, who shot to fame on Big Brother, working alongside him in the night show, just an extraordinary character. So my tip, particularly for young women, is even if it terrifies you, say yes. I think you'd probably know as a journo, Jen, and I'd be interested to hear your comments on this, is just getting confident in your communication with being over familiar. I think of Katrina Roundtree when I announce, and I think she's so warm with her audience through the screen, and she's so over familiar when she's interviewing someone for the first time that you feel like you know them. And I think that's a good skill in a show ring, to have a couple of facts or stories on anyone you're running into, even lean over to the wife next to them or the other competitor and say, I'm about to interview Jen McCutcheon. Can you tell me a bit about her? Oh, she's a journo with the ABC. Oh, she's a farmer. She lives in Collie. Oh, she's grown up, And then by the time you interview Jen, she's so comfortable and relaxed, and the audience is so interested in her and her exhibit. It's just a great way to warm the crowd up and get a lot more out of your interviews. And it's a lot about laughing and smiling. And you probably find that with your interviews too.
Especially from my past career as a sports reporter, having to make footballers talk, it's very difficult, which is probably similar to making farmers talk and sometimes. So being able to find that sort of common ground with people too, I find is really handy and makes them loosen up, because as soon as you put a microphone in front of people, they clam up. So if you can make them feel as relaxed as possible, that's the best way to get the most out of them, and just have a chat, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And that probably is a good segue to my fourth top tip, which is ignore people who say they don't want to be interviewed. Probably 1% of people really genuinely hate it afterwards. 99% of people are just saying, I asked you not to interview me and thank you so much for doing it. Because everyone who's at a show has a phenomenal story. They've either spent weeks, months, years, decades preparing to exhibit their sheep, cattle, horses, poultry, or they've been on the committee for 5 generations, or they're enormously proud of the contribution that their team has made, and giving them a microphone as an opportunity to extract that story out of them. Then there's other people that will just yarn and yarn and yarn. I was up at the Capella show in Queensland in the Central Highlands this year, and I found a former president whose father had gifted 20 acres of his land, carved it off, to allow the Show Society to establish their showgrounds. And then it turns out he was a poet. And so I just kind of said, do you have some of your poetry with you? And he said, I've got a book here. I handed him a mic and walked away for 45 minutes. It was great. He just regaled the audience with poetry at a pretty quiet time of the day. And so it worked out really well for me and for him. And I think we can underappreciate how critical shows are to people, and that they do have a story to tell. And if you're not a natural interviewer, I mean, I'm kind of lucky in that you and I come from journalism backgrounds, but just writing 20 questions. I often have other young announcers say to me, how do I interview people if I don't know anything about them? There are sort of 20 go-to questions you can just pull together that work for everyone. And it's, is this your first show? Obviously not. You've been coming here since 1973. And they'll tell you that. So you can ask the dumb questions and not be afraid to do that. One of the more personal tips I would provide is, if you're starting to do more and more shows, or if I would love to see some young people, particularly young stock and station agents or former rural ambassadors, go around their zone or their sub-chamber or their region and pick up the 4 or 5 shows in their area. So if you're in your kind of area, do Gilgandra and Canberra and pick up Dubbo and do that batch there. But what you'll find is, as you go to more and more of these events, you're meeting sort of 100 people at least every time. But you're the strange person in a bright pink jacket and pearls and makeup with a microphone. So you're more recognisable to everyone because you're not local and you've just popped in. The ratio of people you're meeting versus the people meeting you is quite significant. They will expect that you remember the music. So I have a real habit now, when I've met everyone at the end of a show and I've written it all in scrawly notes and I've had a good chat with so-and-so, I go and update my notes for the next year so that literally the day before I arrive at Bathurst Show or Orange Show, I can say, that's right, that's so-and-so, and they do this, and you can pick up where you left off. I would recommend to people doing it for the first few years to work in pairs. As I said before, I was so lucky to work with Tim Dreverman early on, who just treated me like an equal and fed me so many great lines and understood the segue and the bounce and the conversation that you're meant to have with your partner. Never put me in a position where I couldn't answer a question. Always read my face if he needed to come in and save me. And I think it's a rare skill, obviously, but it's a great way to head into the show announcing scene, because doing it on your own for 12 and 13 hours a day when you're not familiar with all of the responsibility that comes with it and all the bits and pieces that happen can probably be a little bit daunting early on.
100%. Well, there's some great tips for these youngsters. Now, you and I both have worked obviously in big arenas with the show or back when I used to work in sport, and it's sometimes controlling crowds. And when I've hosted events, I find it's really hard when everyone's dishing up their dessert and you've got to control the crowd to listen to you. How do you go about getting people's attention and having them listen when they're there enjoying a day out and wanting to chat with the person next to them? Because I'd say that's probably one of the trickiest parts of your job, would it be?
Yeah, it is. And there's only a few, one of the sort of rare elements of running a show is everyone's talking all the time anyway, and you're just kind of providing background commentary for the people that are watching what you're talking about. But there are moments like the official opening or a major presentation, or a lead into a key speaker in the night show, or when a dignitary turns up, that you do need to get the crowd's attention. It's funny because your inclination will be to speak more loudly and try to get everyone to submit and be quiet, and that's actually the opposite of what works. So speaking quickly and being really calm with silence and just standing and being so relaxed and calm in your silence, people naturally, through politeness, gravitate towards joining you in that. And then once it starts to really quieten down, and I mean get quiet, that's when you start. So it's being unafraid, and I think it probably helps aging a little bit and getting more comfortable in your own skin, to just stand there and hold the space and say, ladies and gentlemen, we're about to get underway with our official opening. I'd appreciate your attention. And then just being really calm. Almost saying that quite softly too, because they're more likely to, I find, to follow in your behaviour than to take the instruction being barked at them by a dictator. But I don't know, other approaches might work for different, more charismatic announcers in terms of getting crowd engagement. But I do find that just slowing it down and getting silent, that crowd tends to follow. Making sure you've turned this music down in the background, because you always have music playing at shows. That's another quick tip, actually. Always take music with you. I've got a little kind of music dongle I take with me now, so it's not chewing up my iPad or my phone, and I just leave it behind. So many shows do not have music, and it really changes the atmosphere to not have a bit of background going on.
It is like a big sporting event, isn't it? Now, people would be sitting here watching you thinking, how polished